Have you ever come home completely exhausted, without having experienced anything difficult in your own day? You carried the weight of a conversation that wasn't yours. You felt a pain that didn't originate in you. You spent hours thinking about a problem that has nothing to do with your life. And the worst part, you thought you were being a good person. If you're going through this, science has a name for what's happening to you, and it will probably surprise you. For decades, empathy has been touted as humanity's noblest virtue. Psychologists have placed it at the top of the list of emotional skills. Schools have taught children to put themselves in someone else's shoes. Entire companies have been built around a culture of empathy. And everything seemed fine. It seemed so. Because in 2011, a group of neuroscientists from the Max Planck Institute in Germany did something no one expected. They placed people inside functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, machines, and measured what happened in their brains when they observed other people suffering. The result was disturbing. The same brain regions that fire when you feel physical pain, the anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortex fire in almost the same way when you just via someone suffering. Almost the same way. Your brain literally can't fully distinguish between feeling pain and witnessing pain. Now, think about it. If you're the type of person who absorbs everything that happens around you, who cries when others cry, who loses sleep over a friend's problems, who buys into everyone else's conflicts as if they were your own, what is that doing to your nervous system? Every day, week after week, year after year. This video isn't about ceasing to care about people. It's about understanding why boundless empathy doesn't make you more human. It makes you more fragile, more exhausted, more empty. And how does science explain exactly the mechanism by which one of history's most celebrated virtues may be silently destroying you from the inside? Before continuing, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, now's the time. Click the subscribe button now, like this video. It really helps the channel grow. And leave a comment below. Do you consider yourself a highly empathetic person? Yes or no? We'll talk about that throughout the video. Chapter 1. The Man Who Felt Everything. Today I'm going to tell you the story of a man. His name was Daniel, 34 years old, financial consultant. The kind of person who, at a party, always ends up in the quietest corner of the house, listening to someone vent about their divorce, their difficult child, the job they lost. Daniel wasn't looking for those kinds of conversations. These conversations caught his attention. Because there was something about him, in the way he looked, in the way he tilted his head slightly when someone spoke, that made people feel, this guy understands me. And indeed, I understood. When his coworker cried in the bathroom because her boyfriend had broken up with her, Daniel felt that lump in his throat, as if he were the one who had been dumped. When his friend lost his job, Daniel would wake up at 3 in the morning, thinking about solutions to a problem that wasn't his. When his mother called, distressed about anything, he would hang up the phone with his heart racing and spend the rest of the day carrying that anguish as if it were his own. Everyone around Daniel said the same thing. "You are the most sensitive person I know." And he smiled, because I felt it was a compliment. But there was something Daniel wasn't realizing. He was always tired, not the physical exhaustion of someone who has worked too hard. It was another kind of exhaustion, the exhaustion of someone carrying too much weight in a backpack they never take off. An exhaustion that arrived before the day even began. He had difficulty making simple decisions. The pleasure of things he once loved, a good book, a walk, a beer with friends, had diminished, as if a layer of glass had formed between him and life. Daniel didn't know the name of what he was experiencing, but psychology has a precise name: compassion fatigue. Chapter 2. When feeling too much becomes a disease. Compassion. Fatigue is not weakness. It is a documented physiological state with measurable biological markers that affects people who are chronically exposed to the suffering of others, whether by profession or temperament. Understanding how this works requires first understanding a distinction that neuroscience took decades to realize. Because not all empathy is the same. There exists affective empathy, which is when you literally feels what the other person feels. The other person's pain enters your body. The other person's fear activates your alarm system. The other person's sadness extinguishes your light. It's automatic, involuntary, and in human beings it's mediated by a fascinating system called mirror neurons. And there is cognitive empathy, which is when you understand. You understand what the other person is feeling without collapsing under its weight. You connect, you care, but you keep your feet firmly on the ground. The first one dissolves you into the other. The second one allows you to truly help. Daniel was a master of the first. Every time someone around him suffered, the mirror neurons in his brain fired like a perfect mirror, reflecting the other person's pain with disturbing fidelity. And his body responded as if the threat were real. Cortisol released, sympathetic nervous system activated, heart rate elevated, day after day, week after week. His body was living in a constant state of emergency, not because of what was happening with him, but because of what was happening with the others. And here comes the cruel paradox that science has revealed. The more Daniel absorbed the pain around him, less he was really able to help. Because when chronic cortisol saturates the nervous system, the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain responsible for reasoning, decision-making, and empathy, is affected. Intelligent, it starts to function in degraded mode. You feel a lot, but you think less. You react more, but you act with less wisdom. Excessive emotional empathy doesn't make you a safe haven for others. This turns you into a castaway in your own sea. Chapter 3. The child who learned to feel for others. But where does this come from? Why do some people absorb everything while others manage to remain whole? To understand this, we need to go back much further than before Daniel was 34 years old. We need to go back to childhood. Daniel grew up in a house where the atmosphere changed according to his mother's mood. She wasn't a bad mother. She was an anxious woman with a difficult life, who unknowingly passed on to her son the responsibility of guessing and regulating the emotional climate of the house. When she was tense, Daniel learned to stay quiet, to make jokes, to ease the situation. When she cried, he felt it was his duty to comfort her. When she smiled, he breathed. This has a name in psychology: emotional parentification. This occurs when a child, without having asked, takes on the role of emotional regulator for one of their parents. And the effect of this on development is devastating in a very quiet way, because that child develops an extraordinarily fine-tuned radar for detecting the suffering of others, a hyper-sharp antenna for capturing micro-expressions, tones of voice, tensions in the air. It's a survival strategy. In a home where the adult's emotional state was unpredictable, learning to read the signs was a way to protect oneself, to anticipate, to control the uncontrollable. The problem? This survival strategy that was useful at age 6 continues to work at age 34, but now it's no longer protection. It's a prison. Carl Jung would call this a problem of self-boundaries, a porous ego, the person who doesn't know where one ends and the other begins, who confuses the pain of others with their own pain, who literally cannot distinguish what is genuinely their own feeling from what is a reflection of the feelings of the person next to them. And this porosity is not a sign of moral weakness. It's an old wound using a noble guise as a disguise, the fantasy that feeling everything is the same as truly loving. Chapter 4. What Science Has Discovered. In 2013, neuroscientist Tanya Singer from the Max Planck Institute for Cognitive and Brain Sciences published a study that became a worldwide reference on the subject. Singer wanted to understand the difference between empathy and compassion at a neurological level. What she found was a clear separation. When participants were trained to practice empathic empathy, to feel the pain of others as if it were their own, cortisol levels increased, mood worsened, exhaustion was measurable, and the willingness to help decreased. It was decreasing. But when participants were trained to practice compassion, which she described as an affective warmth directed toward the other, combined with the motivation to alleviate suffering as collapse within it, the pattern was completely different. The nervous system stabilized, the willingness to help increased, and the well-being of the participants themselves improved. The conclusion was straightforward. Excessive emotional empathy is not a way to help others. It's a path to the collapse of the one who helps. But Singer wasn't the only one. Psychologist Paul Bloom, a professor at Yale and author of the book Against Empathy. It was even more provocative. Bloom argued that affective empathy, the kind of empathy most people glorify, is actually a terrible moral guide because it is biased, short-term, and quickly depletes. You feel deeply for the person in front of you, but you become blind to distant, abstract, but much greater suffering. Empathy is like a spotlight, he wrote. It illuminates with intensity those in front of you, but it leaves the rest of the world in the dark. And that spotlight, when shone too brightly, burns whoever is holding it. Chapter 5, The Night Daniel Collapsed. It was a typical Thursday. Daniel was in the office when he received a message from his best friend. "Dude, my girlfriend left. I need you." He left work midway through. He canceled an important meeting. He took the subway, crossing half the city, to get to his friend's apartment. He spent 4 hours listening, absorbing, feeling each word as if it were a knife slowly entering his body. He arrived home at 11 o'clock at night. He lay in bed, unable to sleep. He kept thinking about his friend's suffering, reliving the stories, constructing solutions, rehearsing the things he could have said. His heart raced. His mind was in a loop. At 2 in the morning, he got up and went to the kitchen to get a drink of water. She looked at herself in the living room mirror, and for the first time in a long time, he asked himself aloud, "How am I doing?" Silence. He didn't know the answer. And it was at that moment that Daniel realized something he should have realized much sooner. He knew exactly how his friend was doing. He knew how his colleague was doing. He knew how his mother was doing. He knew how his ex-girlfriend was doing, the one he had broken up, all with 2 years ago, but whose pain he still carried as if it were a relic. But what about himself? Total disconnection. He had become so adept at feeling for others that he had forgotten how to feel for himself. That's not generosity, that's self-abandonment. And psychology has a name for this specific pattern: emotional hypervigilance. It is the state of someone whose nervous system is permanently tuned to the frequency of others' suffering and completely desensitized to their own needs. The warning signal from your own body was silenced, because since childhood, you learned that the signs of other were more urgent than theirs. Here comes the part you may not have thought about yet. There is a fundamental difference between being an empathetic person and being a person who uses empathy as a control mechanism. Wait, let me explain this better. There are people who buy into the battles of others, not because they genuinely feel the pain of others, but because unconsciously they need to be needed. They need to be a safe haven. They need to feel that without them, the other person would be lost. That's not empathy. This is what psychology calls emotional codependency. And the difference between the two is subtle enough that you can go years without realizing which one you're in. A genuinely empathetic person feels the pain of others and wants them to get better, even if it means that person no longer needs you. A codependent person feels the other person's pain and, deep down, it needs that he continues to suffer, because the suffering of the other is the reason she exists in that relationship. This type of person, it doesn't help to free, help to keep the other person close. Daniel needed months of therapy to deal with this, and the moment he faced it was one of the most painful and liberating of his life. Because realizing that part of your generosity was actually a sophisticated way of fulfilling a personal need doesn't diminish you as a person. It makes you honest, and honesty is the beginning of any real transformation. Chapter 6. What Buddhist monks knew that neuroscience took centuries to prove. Here is one of the most beautiful ironies of this whole story. Buddhism, a tradition over 2,500 years old, had already mapped this problem with a precision that neuroscientists only confirmed centuries later. In Buddhism, there is a concept called mudita, compassionate joy, and there is a concept called upekkha, equanimity. Buddhist equanimity is not indifference. It's something much more sophisticated. It is the ability to care deeply about the suffering of another without being dragged for him, to be present without dissolving, to offer genuine care without losing the ground beneath his feet. The monks called this the unwavering mind. Not because he doesn't feel it, but because she learned to feel without being destroyed by what she feels. And what Tanya Singer's studies showed is that monks with decades of meditative practice exhibited radically different neurological patterns when exposed to the suffering of others. The The pain system was activated in a controlled manner, recognizing the suffering was acknowledged but without collapsing. The prefrontal cortex remained active. Compassion was exercised from a place of stability, not despair. They could feel it, but they didn't get lost. And that's not cold, it's not distant, it's no less human. It is the most sustainable and most effective way to care for others. Because you can't save anyone if you're sinking yourself. So, what did we learn today? Let's recap. Empathic empathy, the kind that makes you feel another's pain in your own body, is real, it's neurological, and when exercised without limits, it leads to burnout. Studies from the Max Planck Institute have shown that the human brain activates the same pain regions when you observe suffering, and chronic exposure to this process compromises the prefrontal cortex, decision-making, and the very ability to help. The difference between effective empathy and compassion is not the intensity of the feeling, but the presence of boundaries. Feeling with the other, as losing oneself, is what Buddhists call equanimity, and what neuroscience has confirmed is the only sustainable model of self-care. Emotional hypervigilance, this permanently tuned radar for the suffering of others, often has its roots in childhood, in dynamics where the child learned that the emotional signals of others were more important than their own. And there is a fine, uncomfortable, but real line between genuine empathy and codependency, where helping others ultimately hides a personal need to be needed, to be indispensable, to exist in function of the suffering of others. Daniel learned all of this. He learned when he stopped, looked at himself in the mirror at 2 a.m, and couldn't answer how he himself looked. And the question that remains for you today is precisely this. If someone were to ask you right now, not how others are doing, not what others need, not how you can help, but only that, how are you? Would you know the answer? Because if the response takes more than a few seconds, perhaps it's time to start feeling a little less for the other person and a little more for yourself, not as selfishness, for survival. If this video made sense to you, if at any point you recognized yourself in Daniel's story, then this content was made for you. Subscribe so no canal, turn on notifications, and leave a like. This helps this content reach more people who need to hear it. And if you enjoyed this video, I invite you to watch one of the ones currently playing on your screen. You'll certainly gain valuable insights because each video on this channel was made with a specific intention to help you understand more deeply who you are, how your mind works, and how you can live with more awareness and freedom. Thank you very much for your attention. See you in the next video.